if you took a 7-year-old and you took an adult, neither one are better prepared to be in business or manage a business or manage people from a sense of stress and sort of anxiety.
Hello, and you're with Aveline Clark on the 6-Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations about what it takes to be 6-star as a 6-star leader in a 6-star business in a 6-star world. And in this episode, I welcome Jane Tarrant, a master of many things all around the breath, breathing, anxiety, the central nervous system, all these aspects of the human self. She has mastered in a way that teaches us to be accountable and present and be able to face the daily challenges that we have in a far more constructive, honorable, and 6-star way. It was just an amazing conversation, and I know you're going to get a lot out of it. I was just left with goosebumps like Steve was, my co-host. She's delightful. She is a gem, and I think we've all got a lot to take from this. So sit back and enjoy the lovely Jane Tarrant. Well, thank you. It is so good to see you, my friend Steve, again, and so lovely to have you here, Jane. Welcome to the 6-Star Business Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Av, another co-host. Wonderful.
Yes, I love these. I love our podcast so much. And Steve, it's always fun when you're riding alongside me. So we've got a special one today because Jane is our only guest, which means that she gets to hog the spotlight, basically, which is quite a rarity on this podcast. And but it's going to be fun. I'm really excited. So to kick us off, Jane, we always like to ask our guests just a few questions to get to know you. So could you tell us, who you are and where you are in the world, who you serve, how you serve them, and maybe something that you like to do when you're not busy serving people, something you like to do in your spare time?
Sure. Okay. So my name is Jane Tarrant. I'm the founder of Link Breathing, and I'm a breathing retrainer and awareness coach. And I love what I do. I'm so passionate about it, which is the most important part, I think, of doing something like this, where you're able to have an impact on other people's lives in a way that they can feel more empowered and more excited about things that they maybe didn't have knowledge of before. So that's kind of where my passion comes in, is the empowerment side. And it's obviously health related with regards to breathing, but there's a lot more to it than that. It affects relationships, and it affects how people are just thinking on a daily basis, and also kind of what else they think they might have control over, which they maybe hadn't considered before. It's often an entry point in terms of improving habits, shall we say, within our life, which at the end of the day is what our life is made up of, isn't it? So it's a good way to understand habits if you haven't come across them before. So the people I work with are basically anyone who breathes is a good start, because I'm a breathing retrainer.
That's always a good goal, isn't it? To wake up breathing.
Yeah, exactly. You hear the jokes about people going, "Oh, you go after anyone with a pulse." Well, really, anyone who breathes, that's a good start. But there are a few things that are the key areas of the type of people I would look for. So although I might work with CEOs at the top of large companies, I'll work with business owners. That's often a typical client for me, because maybe they're a bit more invested in their own health. Maybe they're higher stress and not sleeping well, and they've got a lot more to lose if they don't put the effort into making some changes in their life, and maybe a bit more self-aware and a bit of money behind them as well. So those sort of things do come through as quite a typical client. But I work with a whole number of people. So I'll work with, people from teachers and postmen and retirees and everyone. And often I get a nice mixture on my online courses, which are at the more affordable end of what I do, because it's pre-recorded and then I can support in that way. So it's nice. I get to meet a mixture of people because, we all breathe. When it comes to the type of issues that someone might have, it'll be things like snorers. That's a really big one for me, because I have a snorers course and I love that topic, because I think it's one of those ones where it's what most people recognize as an actual issue. Breathing is so misunderstood and so badly educated on that it's only when something bothers their partner or has them kicked out onto the spare bed or has them sleeping on a yoga mat downstairs or has them having to stay up late so everybody else in the house can get to sleep that it starts to become an issue. You know, maybe people go camping and they're embarrassed to go camping because they don't want to be the snoring tent. And so those sort of things become something that makes people change. Particularly if they maybe are struggling with, going towards the kind of sleep apnea side, which is obviously much more serious, and also just a sort of a suboptimal life, I guess, is something that a lot of people notice. They live suboptimally for a very long time, and then something else happens and it just gets worse, like higher stress, or they put on weight, so the snoring gets a little bit worse, and then they notice they're even more tired, or they set up their own business and they're not sleeping as well, less time, they're working till 1 a.m, etc. And then you add kids in and boom. So something like that maybe wasn't a problem initially can become a problem later, or part of the problem. And I often think of it as being like the tip of the iceberg. So they see snoring as the issue, I see the underneath bit. So when somebody comes to me, they might come to me for that issue, but we work on the whole breathing retraining, the whole habit structure. And quite a lot of clients will end up doing things like suddenly they're working on weight management, but in a healthier mindset way rather than in a sort of a toxic mindset way. They're working on, a range of other things, from just feeling better in themselves, giving themselves time off, permission, and that's often an area where they'll come to me for snoring because that's the hook. That's the thing that they recognize. Not many people recognize that they need to put themselves first. They need time off. They need to give themselves permission. And that's a kind of the underlayers. The other side of it is anxiety and panic attacks. So anybody who is struggling with often a kind of a hidden problem, in the sense of they think that they're alone. I know when I first had panic attacks, I was like, I'm not the sort of person that gets panic attacks. And I don't have them very often, but if I do have that kind of that feeling now, I stop them well before it gets to a panic attack now, because I know what to do. Whereas before it was that I need more air, and that fear, and that sort of you crumple to the floor and you tell yourself you're going to be okay, and you don't really believe it, because actually you have no idea how you're going to get out of the situation. So that's a really interesting point for me, and it's sometimes something that I do, especially in corporate groups, as an intro to show the power that we have. These, like, I imagine them all as like little superpowers or tools inside us. And I joke sort of when we're younger, you ask most boys when they're kids at school, like, what would you want to be if you had a superpower? And they'd be like, oh, I'd like to be invisible so I could go in the girls' changing room. I remember that coming up and up at school. But for me, I'm like, well, I would like to be able to control my nervous system, and I can. So in the sense of you've got control over something so simple, or so complex, really, through something so simple. And so a lot of what I do is for people who maybe don't recognize everything that they need to work on, but they've identified with one major thing, whether it be anxiety, panic attacks, asthma attacks, with even hot flushes and things, if they're struggling with that sort of thing, and snoring. Those are typical examples. And the other thing you said is, what do I do when I'm not working with those people? So my current thing is to embrace a little bit more creativity. I noticed when I was working in the corporate sector that I sort of didn't allow my favorite bits of myself the time to come out. And maybe I was directing myself in one area or another. Like, I always wanted to be achieving and be creative somewhere. So like renovating my house was quite a project for a while, but it meant that all the focus was in such a structured space. So I'm currently playing with, I took up acrylic painting and I just whack it on there, with the kind of idea of like, I would, when my daughter, who was 1 or 2 at the time, I was trying to do little artwork with her, and I was looking on Pinterest and deciding we were doing cards, and we're doing Christmas cards, and then I got baubles, and I was like, why am I being so structured with what I'm doing? Why do I feel the need to control this situation? Control is great when you're having a panic attack and you need to regain control, but not so great when you're trying to actually be creative and to grow. And so I just literally got some canvases and started whacking paint on. And I did like flowers, but they were always from memory. There was no sort of structure of a picture. And that's been really interesting. And I'm starting to do clay work, and I bought myself a pottery wheel. And I'm just really interested to try and create time to do a little bit more of this, because I think it's great for the soul.
Where were you 20 years ago?
At school.
Yeah, I could have done with some snoring help then.
It's an interesting one that, not everybody's always ready to do the work. Sometimes people just want a quick fix, if they think there's a quick fix, and there's not always. So capturing people at the right time is important.
I'm sure Av's got some questions, but if I can jump in here, I'm really fascinated about how that, like your migration, if you like, from the corporate world into what you're doing now, and how do your clients, is it always around the that necessary effort to get involved with what you do, as opposed to it just being organic and well-being? So there's always this crisis moment that seems to edge people forward.
Yeah. When it comes to the type of people that work with me, they have to be at the point of willing to do the work. It's a habit change, and nobody that, if you want to get fit, for example, it's going to take a lot of sessions, whether you're going to the gym or whether you're doing stuff on your floor or whatever it is. You've got to put the work in, and you have a reason to put that work in, and it becomes a lifestyle thing. If somebody is just like, oh, I've got a problem, but actually I just want to buy a gizmo or a gadget, that's not going to be a space where they're actually ready to deal with it, and it's not serious enough. For me, it's about those who sometimes come through on the corporate side, if they're looking at staff that are really struggling after maybe they've had a pretty toxic relationship within the company from a senior level, and they've maybe been ousted and they need to sort of deal with the aftermath. That's quite a good one. The understanding of where people don't feel safe. So safety is not necessarily a word that we talk about in the corporate world. But I remember when I was in the corporate world feeling very unsafe at times, to the point where, if I was in meetings with certain directors at certain times, I might feel a little bit like an impala trapped in the room. And there was nothing I could do about that. And it became, well, that's what you have to do in that scenario. And I just thought, this is not working for me. There needs to be a discussion. I need to educate. And I actually educated the directors that I felt unsafe. And we adjusted how we then met in future. And I felt much more in control, in the sense that I could still have that conversation, but just in a way that I didn't feel trapped. So recognizing that takes a lot of self-awareness, and it took me a long time to come to that, and it was only through doing breathing retraining and understanding my body and becoming much more aware and tracking my menstrual cycles and really understanding the whole process that I was like, I finally get it. Like, I understand why I've been struggling and why I've been aggressive maybe in some situations, or defensive in some situations towards particular members of staff, where maybe we were both maybe threatening to each other. Not that we necessarily meant to be, but these relationships can happen within a corporate world. And unless you've got the awareness to know what to do about it and to have that open conversation with that person if necessary, and potentially with a bit of support, because that person might also not be ready for that conversation, you often can't move forward. So for me, that's a really key one, is that feeling of unsafe, as well as stress. So if you've got somebody who is turning off their alarm in the morning and they've got that micro stressor, and then they've got to get the kids ready for work, and another micro stressor, and then they've got to drive to the office and another micro stressor, and they're just like, I remember getting to work and just being like, by the time I was in some of my first meetings, I was already reaching some of my, my sort of threshold. And I had no idea that I was that bad. I had no idea that it could be dealt with, that you could actually sort of let the pressure out the pressure cooker. And I was so naive. I was so sort of uneducated. And once you understand that you have the control to make changes throughout the day, that yes, those stresses happen, but maybe a bit more awareness of how you approach them, stepping away and saying, you know what, dress yourself. I'll be back in 3 minutes once I've, got myself ready, rather than that need to take control of every situation and feel in the stress of the moment every time. And those subtle changes can make a big difference, but the breath gives you the access to understand when you have to change your other behavior, especially when it comes to kids and time things as well. So yeah, hopefully that's kind of relevant.
Jane, I have to say, wow. I've just been listening so intently at everything, all the elements of what you do, how you help people, and obviously the triggers that they experience to then need what you do. And I'm thinking, I recognize that. I've been there. I've experienced that. I had a partner who snored, and I learned how to sleep with a pillow over my head before kicking him out of the bedroom. And the anxiety piece. So there's so many elements of what you said, being unsafe in the corporate room, that corporate space. And I'm listening to everything, and I'm just so grateful that you are doing what you're doing. And so I just want to first of all honor that, and that you've been able to go through what you've gone through to find this happy space where you can serve the world with your genius and make life better for people, because that's effectively what you're doing. You're giving them their life back and their sense of inner peace, right?
Try. Yeah.
And I think, the awareness piece, because I don't know about you, Av, but while Jane was talking, I'm listening to my breath. I'm going, wow, that how powerful is that? So I'm now, and I don't know what I'm doing, right? I have no idea whether I'm doing the right thing or not, but I'm going, wow, it's, I'm trying to take deeper breath. I'm going, well, what is it that I need to do to get into that space? So, is it appropriate for maybe Jane to give us a sort of a couple of little thoughts or tips in that area?
So in other words,
sure.
you be the guinea pig, Steve.
Yeah, why
tell
not?
tell us what's going on, Steve, and then see how Jane can help.
So Steve, the first thing I'd say is pop your one hand on your upper chest, and then pop one hand on your you'll put your thumb in the little squidgy spot just below where a bra strap would be if you were wearing one. So just where the ribs are splitting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a squidgy bit there. And then sort of spread the rest of your hand down so your little finger is down towards your belt buckle. And you can feel sort of like your belly button is like an equator above and below. So your little finger and your thumb are allowing you to feel the top and the bottom of your belly and the upper chest. So the first thing is always just notice where you're breathing into. That is the first thing. So notice, and I'll talk you through a few things that you can notice. You don't need to speak back, just take it in and then tell us afterwards. So first of all, you're breathing normally. Do you notice your upper hand moving at all? Is it a little bit? Is it a lot? Okay, cool. Try not to talk during it and just breathe, and you'll take in a few different things and then let me know just so you can really focus. So your upper chest, is it moving much? Then is your thumb moving of your bottom hand? Is it moving outwards on the in-breath and back in on the out-breath, or is it doing the opposite? And then is your little finger moving at the bottom as well? So just notice those for now. And that will tell us whether you're an upper chest breather, whether you're diaphragmatically breathing, or whether you're sort of squishing into your lower guts effectively, to put it in a nice way. The second thing is noticing how audible is your breath. So is it loud and rushed, or sort of forced or restricted? Can you hear it really easily? Or is it quite calm and quiet and silent and gentle, and the flow is minimal? And then notice, do you feel sort of tense in and around like the jaw when you're thinking about breathing? Does it become a sort of a tense thing where you're actually sort of starting to worry about how you're breathing? Or can you feel just a softening in the face? And then also your tongue. Is your tongue in the bottom of your mouth with the tip touching your bottom teeth? Or is your tip in the roof of the mouth with the rest of the tongue sort of relaxed back down? Or is your full tongue sealed against the roof of your mouth and effectively sealing off the airway? So just noticing those things, first of all. And then the length of the breath. Is it short and shallow, or is it long and deep into those lower hands? Cool. What did you notice?
My thumb, definitely. So I'm breathing from the center.
Yeah.
My tongue's at the bottom of my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
The breath itself, I believe that I'm probably more a shallow breather, short breathing as opposed to longer breaths. But I feel that in this moment, I'm aware and I'm being intentional. So it's a little bit longer, the breath, and definitely I can't hear my breath, but I'm partially deaf too, so who knows.
It's a good excuse for not hearing your breath. Fair enough. Cool. So the interesting things there is it's great that it's going into your thumb, for example. That's where your diaphragm is, and quite often we don't want a huge amount of movement when we're sitting down. So we're not looking for a maximum breath. We're just looking for that gentle movement into the thumb. If you've got any upper chest movement at all, that shouldn't be there. So not everybody notices it. Quite often I see it on a Zoom screen when I'm working with clients, as opposed to them seeing it themselves. And then they like, oh, I am, aren't I? So it's often so normal to people, they don't notice the upper chest breath. Some people are very exaggerated, right up into the shoulders and heaving, and they try and take a breath, whenever they're thinking about breathing, it becomes this really exaggerated thing. So it's good that you're in that space. One thing I'd say, though, is your tongue is in the wrong place. So you've got your tongue in the bottom of your mouth, and that is not where the tongue should belong. The tongue should be creating a seal so that your nose works by default, even if your mouth is open. And that's something that, particularly with snorers, is a common issue, and also with those who mouth breathe regularly throughout the day. So, for example, I was a mouth breather for like most of my life, hence why my face is so narrow, my jaw is set back. I had crooked teeth, but I've had braces, but even my front two teeth now have been pushed forward, and I swallowed incorrectly as well, with like a darting tongue, almost like a lizard. It darts forward, sort of between the teeth that are open, but behind the lips, so you don't notice necessarily. And I've had to retrain how I even swallow, which makes a big difference. And then when you get the tongue position trained, your nasal breathing becomes more natural and more possible. Quite often, if you change your tongue from the bottom to the top of your mouth, you notice a change in the airway space when you're breathing through your nose. So someone who's got a really nice wide smile will maybe not notice so much change, but someone who's got an impacted face like me, because I was a mouth breather, my tongue was dropped to the bottom of my mouth, which meant that it wasn't acting almost like a braces from the inside, pushing my teeth out and forming my face correctly. So up until about age 12, our faces form based on chewing and breathing and nutrients as well, but breathing has a massive impact on that. So I now have a sort of the upper part of my palate, which is pushed into my nose, or into my nasal cavity, and that decreases that space and can also decrease the space at the back where you're breathing through. So some people do feel more impacted, shall we say, and therefore retraining to breathe later in life can feel difficult, but it's possible as long as you have structurally enough space. And therefore, you need to be aware of things that you might not be aware of, if that makes sense, inside. But quite often, as long as you can breathe well through your nose comfortably for a while, then you should be able to breathe through it pretty much all the time, apart from talking.
I hope everybody was actually following along with us when we did that, because just now, the one thing I forgot to mention was that my jaw was quite tight. But with pushing the tongue to the top of my mouth, I actually felt the increase of air through the nasal passage, and my jaw relaxed as well, which was a bit. What was your experience through that? Were you following along, or were you?
I was following. Yeah, I was fascinated. I've done a little bit of this before in the past, and about 12, 13 years ago, I went through a lot of yoga practice, hot yoga, and I learned how to breathe by putting my tongue, closing off, and doing, was it Ujjayi breathing? And unfortunately, when I was younger, this is just popped into my memory when you were talking about being a child. I used to always eat and close my mouth like properly, and I would breathe a little bit loudly, and my siblings around the table would complain that I was so loud at eating, my breathing. And so I learnt then not to breathe very deeply. I sort of stopped breathing deeply then as a child. So, wow, all these things that happened to us. And I remember being so conscious as a child then not to breathe deeply, because I'd always shut my mouth and breathe through my nose, but clearly I was being too loud. So there you go. That's, yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be breathing through our nose. And when we eat, if you meet a mouth breather who cannot breathe through their nose, they rush their food, they barely chew, and they're like, so they can breathe again, or they're sort of eating with their mouth open just so they can get breath in and out. And that's something that I experienced as a child, that feeling of not feeling comfortable eating. And I disliked chewing, and that makes it worse. We need chewing in order to have correct facial structure, in order to be able to breathe better. And a lot of things you'll notice with kids as well. Like I spoke to a teacher the other day, and I just mentioned this very small area to her, and she was like, I know exactly which kids you're talking about, and some of them have speech impediments as well.
Yeah.
And they were also the ones that had less attention span, and were less able to actually focus. And maybe they weren't sleeping as well. And so it can come out in behavioral as well, through just how we breathe. And because for me, the real passion is, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I am constantly telling her to close her mouth, to breathe through her nose. And she says, but it's stuffy. And I say, well, if you use it, then it stays open. If you don't, it becomes stuffy. So you need to keep using it. And I keep trying to tell her that it's healthy. And sometimes I get this sort of like, face from a 3-year-old. But she does do it, and she does understand that she can. And when she's asleep, I sometimes pinch her lips together. It will often make her stir, turn over, close her own mouth, and go back to sleep through her nose. And those sorts of things can make such a difference with a young child, that you just bring in a better habit as soon as you can. And I do everything I can to protect her nose and my nose when we have colds and things like that. I actually mouth tape myself at night, and especially during a cold. So because my teeth are slightly in the way as well, when I close my lips, I can't quite get a perfect lip seal. Then I find it difficult to keep my mouth closed. And because I've got a set back jaw, I don't have a nice closure of the face when I go to sleep. And especially if you hang back, it's very easy to have your jaw hang open. So for me, it's really probably going to be the rest of my life that I tape, because I feel more comfortable like that. Some clients use taping as a method to train their tongue position at night, because you can get it in position, but unless your mouth is closed, you struggle to keep it in position sometimes. And so it can be a backup as well. And for me, it's things like, if we can teach children at a young age, because we've learned the basics, then we can maybe prevent as many braces, if they maybe had 3 or 4 otherwise, or maybe prevent braces at all. Or maybe, if we're including nutrition and chewing as well, we could be in a much better space. Some people are going to be structurally different from genes as well. Often over the years, our faces have got narrower and smaller, and breathing has got more difficult for our species. So there are some challenges stuff we're up against, but if we don't start changing it now, it really worries me what we will have happen later. And I'm not interested in being the most knowledgeable and the top expert. I don't really like the word expert. I think it as long as you know about 3 more things than somebody else, most people perceive you an expert. So if I can create the entry-level primary school education to the world, including CEOs who have had no more education on it than anybody else, then we can get to a space where corporates and families are going to have that trickle down through those who can, to start the process. And that's really my dream, to really start this kind of, my mission is to lead global education on healthy breathing and breathing retraining. And then hopefully lots of other people will come up behind me and do a lot more of the work.
What impact? So you've obviously been working with executives and CEOs. I'm really interested to know what the impact on them and their lives, and how they then, you talked about safety in the workplace. What impact has it shown?
Absolutely. So, to give you a typical example of a conversation I had the other day with a CEO, I said, we're about 5 weeks in to 8 weeks working together, but spread over a number of weeks. We had a few gaps as well. And I said, would you ever have considered bringing something like this into your team before? And he was like, no. I would have sent you over to the HR person and, wouldn't have even considered it. It just not even on my radar.
To the HR grave.
Just, I mean, and the HR person might have had an interest, you never know. And the one thing I struggle with regards to corporates is there's a lot of tick box in some companies, and there's some companies genuinely want to find solutions. So, and you don't know which one is which. I often find the easiest way into a company is to work with somebody in it, and they have the belief to say, actually, you know what, we can make a change for a lot of people here. I don't need to be my own salesperson; they can be. So, it gives you that one in terms of their awareness. Also, I've had some people who were maybe changing roles, and I had to prepare them and say, you now know what it feels like to feel safe and unsafe, and you understand that feeling. When you change roles, be prepared to not feel as you used to feel. Be prepared to feel that you actually feel unsafe, that this is a new experience, that you are in a new team. And although you are very good at what you do and you're very well sought after and you're very well paid, you are still a human with a nervous system that now you are able to read. But don't be disenchanted by that. Be empowered, because you now have the tools. Whereas before, you had those feelings, you didn't have the tools, and you just sort of ignored them. And that stress into the body is huge. Now you can prepare for those events. You can accept those, and you can be more compassionate to the staff around you and actually educate them on the feelings that you might have. Even recognizing those who are aggressive and defensive in your team. Are they just being difficult? Or has something in your company made them unsafe? So from that side of things, going in at a higher level within a team can create great change within the understanding of the team, and allowing people to get help without feeling like, I wouldn't want to tell my boss I'm struggling, because the boss understands the basics of a nervous system at that point. The other side is, I've had people come to me that are snorers, that have panic attacks, that are having sort of difficulty when they're playing sport, maybe have nasal obstructions, lots of different sort of reasons why they might come to me as well. And, the idea is, I had somebody the other day who had to run for something, and they weren't expecting to have to run. They were rushed and they were going to be late for this thing. And they had the control, because I taught them how. They pulled this tool out their tool bag, and they were able to say, okay, it was really scary at that time, but I regained control. I understood what I had to do, and I was fine. So even though they got out of breath, they were able to bring it back. And that is, for somebody who maybe would have previously had a panic attack about it, they've actually managed to control. So those scenarios. And I think a lot of people who are under high pressure, I mean, how many CEOs would admit they're having breathing difficulties when they're trying to get to sleep, or panic attacks during the day, or maybe waking up with panic in the night where they can't breathe in the night? How many are admitting to that? Probably very few. And, I purposely keep a lot of my clients anonymous because I want people to be able to come to me and tell me what they need to tell me in order to start processing through those tools that they can have. And it doesn't have to be unpacking everything in their life. They don't need to go through therapy with me. But quite often, some people who maybe had an aversion to assistance, be it therapy or CBT or other, maybe even talking therapies that I don't provide, but by talking to me about certain things, by understanding their body, they start to make changes and they start to be more open to further support. And that then can be reflected within their companies as well, where they recognize other people also need packages or one-to-one help that can kind of help them. So it's a really big range. And some people just get sent by their wives because they're snorers. So, But yeah, big difference. One guy actually said recently on one of my last calls, I never realized how shit I felt before. And now when I have a bad night, I notice the difference. And that's the difference, that, yeah, you'll have bad nights occasionally, but now you can feel those differences. And that's a big one that most people are completely oblivious.
As you're talking, I'm listening to you explain, obviously, a lot of symptoms, the different types of people and the issues they have. And then I kind of went big picture and went, this is something that we all experience to some degree, right? Let's face it. No one taught us how to breathe, how to chew, unless our parents somehow had some, wisdom or a manual that I've never seen. And I'm wondering, is this something that you're seeing happening more and more in the last decade, in the last couple of years? Is this an increasing thing? Because I know for me and the experiences I had in the corporate world, and even as a business owner, panic or anxiety exists. And I think we all have experienced it to some degree, whether we want to admit it or not. But are you seeing this as something that's becoming more prevalent in our society, or is it always been there, but we haven't been talking about it?
I mean, I don't know anybody who previously didn't identify with anxiety that hasn't experienced some level of anxiety in the last few years. I mean, I think this has been a massive wake-up call. It's also been a time where breathing has been a thing, in the sense of, oh, I can't breathe in my mask, or I don't want to wear a mask, or I feel short of breath for the first time. Is it COVID? These moments where breath awareness has increased, but yet for the majority of people, they're still like not kind of putting the dots together, shall we say. They still don't get it because there's been no education. So yes, panic attacks and high anxiety has become more commonplace. I'm sort of speaking to people in my community as well a lot more, and I'm being much more aware on online communities to just see, what sort of words people are coming out with, what kind of what feelings people are experiencing, and people are being quite open, especially on the online community, because they feel safer to do so, and they can do it from their own home, and they can try to find support. It's a time where I think that there shouldn't be any taboo around anxiety. It's a natural emotion. Like, we are meant to feel it. And we're going to feel unsafe if we're going into our boss's room, even just for them to say well done. That feeling of walking into the boss's room feels scary. That feeling of having to try something new, that feeling of having to deal with your children more than the number of hours you signed up to. Thank you very much. I certainly felt that one. I was like, whoa, but I signed up to nursery and being a mum, not being a full-time mum at home. Thank goodness my child wasn't at school, because I'm not quite sure how I would have dealt with that. And I feel very sorry for those who had to deal with the impact of that. And I think that's still taking its toll. And now getting back into it's not even a normal society anymore, because it's been untrained. And I think that's being really difficult for a lot of people, is this time of, well, I started to feel safe at home, having felt sort of not comfortable there, but now I've got to go back to the office, and they don't really know where they are. And I think that's a real thing for a lot of people right now, where bosses might be saying, well, let's go back to the office. Maybe some of them were already in the whole time. They don't realize the impact it will have on others. And for others, they're sort of saying, well, I'd rather start my own job, or I'd rather, change something. So those impacts we've got to be really aware of at the moment, that the anxiety levels are substantially higher, and we are ill-equipped. I was thinking this morning in the shower, because that's where I think, I was thinking this morning that if you took a 7-year-old and you took an adult, neither one are better prepared to be in business or manage a business or manage people from a sense of stress and sort of anxiety. Neither one are more prepared. And yes, obviously we know more when we're older. We have learned better relationships and things, but from the basic level of our bodies, I think actually an adult is probably sort of placed in a worse place for running a company than a 7-year-old, because a 7-year-old hasn't got maybe the awareness of the impacts and the bad things and and so you start to think, well, if we're not teaching our 7-year-olds, then how are we going in as adults into these positions and being there? And one of my clients who did manage a team of over 100 people, he said, we're taught to manage, but we're not taught how to cope with management. And that's a really important part. And if you don't have compassion and you don't have awareness, how can you lead a team in that way? How can you lead a team where they feel safe?
So true. And the same goes for someone who's left the corporate world, who's, gone into the small business environment. I've been in small business for 15, this is coming up to 15 years. And just like when I was in the corporate world, I didn't get taught how to cope. And so I guess what I'm really keen to hear from you is, how important is it? I mean, this is the 6-Star Business Podcast. And by the way, wellness is one of the foundational pillars of a 6-star business. Okay, because we know that this becoming 6-star starts with the self. And I know we've taken 40 minutes to get to this point of the conversation, but this is one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on the podcast to talk about this, because it's not talked about. So can you share some experience or some insight into how does a entrepreneur / business owner, because that's most of our listeners, how can they take this and use it to be, I guess, a better manager, producer, to create more impact in the world? Because I'm sure that the moment someone lives in anxiety, this is what I know, when you're in anxiety, you're not in your creative space, you're in fear. So you can't be creative and come up with solutions in business if shit has hit the fan, and therefore you're not going to make an impact, or the impact that you really want. So for me, what you're talking about and what you do is absolutely so critical for a person to adopt. And I just would love to hear you speak to that some more.
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right, that feeling of being in a space. So I might think of it as overwhelm. And a lot of people maybe don't want to use the word anxiety, but overwhelm is something they identify with. If I feel overwhelmed, even the smallest of admin tasks feels too much for me. I don't want to paint. I don't want to be creative. I don't want to design. I don't want to think in that way. You just get on with the stuff you feel comfortable with. So in that space, one of my top tips is, if you can, 24 hours away, but lunchtime to lunchtime. So if you're in your own small business and you don't feel you can leave your emails that long, you find babysitting if you need it, or ask your partner to stay with the kid, and you just literally go away for 24 hours on your own, where you let go. And I think it's very difficult to, we think, we need a 2-week holiday in the Maldives, or, I wish, but, things like that. And actually, though, you can create these sort of holidays, these feelings of letting go multiple times throughout the year. And that's actually much more important than just having a nice splash holiday for a couple of weeks, twice a year. So the first thing is 24 hours, you go at lunchtime, book into an Airbnb or something like that, come back next lunchtime, even if it's half an hour from your home, and you can just say, this time is for me. I've, uninstalled all my apps. I don't take my laptop. I go and I maybe take some paints or some pencils. Maybe I just take some books and I just go and do whatever I feel like without any restriction on I should be. Because when you're in the overwhelmed space and you maybe work from home and small business, etc., everything needs doing, the house, the decorating, the business, the kids, whatever. And as soon as you go to somebody else's house where you don't have to clean and you don't have to do, and you just create this new space for yourself, it allows you to feel what you need to feel. And just, I stand at the window and just look out for like half an hour holding a cup of tea just because I can. And I don't feel guilty in the way that I would if I was doing that at home. And so giving little tiny mini breaks like that, it doesn't have to be expensive. You could even go and stay at a friend's house and just sort of, but not somewhere where you feel that someone's drawing or needing anything from you. That's a really important part of letting go. And the other side is, what can we do on a daily basis? So if we're in the space where we're not getting outside for 5-10 minutes of sunshine or going for a walk, that's been something I've really started again recently because it had dropped off and I felt so much better for doing it. I felt like I didn't have the time and my husband worked shift work and I was making all the excuses, but I was like, actually, I did it while he was off for a couple of weeks. I got into a habit. I then started doing it even when he wasn't. And I realized that we are in our own way when it comes to things we really want and need. And quite often, if we think we should and we know we want to, but we don't feel we can, then we really, really, really need to, because it's something that we have to push through. I think we hold ourselves sort of to much higher standards than we need to. And we think it has to be a half-hour yoga session or a 20-minute walk. And actually, just standing outside with a cup of tea for 2 minutes looking at the sun before you go back in is better than nothing. And just doing 5 stretches on a yoga mat on the floor before going, well, I touched the mat today, back to your job, is better than nothing. And if you do that regularly, there's a new habit. So it's the same with the breathing. When somebody is in a space of anxiety and poor breathing habits, in the sense of upper chest breathing, mouth breathing, heavy, far, shallow breathing, or really bloating into the belly but feeling restricted in the lower belly rather than actually using the diaphragm further up where they can get nice expansion into the ribs. If somebody is feeling that they're not in the right space, you just have to take it really slowly and really gently and with intention and that kind of thing. And something else I found that for me really works is just getting in touch with your body in any way you can. For me, I'm a menstruating woman. I'm of that age. So I track my cycle and I work with my cycle. I know when I'm going to be sassy and outgoing and able to work a room. And I can do that at any time because of my personality. But if I didn't have that personality, I am sure as hell not going to be doing it. At certain parts of my cycle, I'm going to be doing it around ovulation. Now, if you don't know when you ovulate, you don't know what that means, you don't know anything about estrogen and what it does for you, how are you going to best place yourself for things you find difficult and wonder why it's so damn hard doing it at the wrong time? And that brings a lot more self-compassion, understanding those things. For me, when I'm premenstrual, my breathing goes awry. I start to have not what I would call panic attacks, but loss of my brain. Just literally, I can't think clearly. That idea of you walk into the kitchen, the family's all wanted you, you felt a bit rushed from work, and they're like, oh, can you cook the vegetables? And you're like, a pea is a vegetable? A carrot is a vegetable? And that's when I use the technique that I teach my clients for anxiety and panic attacks. And 2 minutes later, I'm like, how can I help? But for that very moment in time, I'm like, oh, and I can't even think where the vegetables are. There's no way I'm going to be prepping vegetables for the next 2 minutes unless I step out. But because I know how, and because I'm compassionate to it's okay, don't worry, just be like, I can't think. And when the reaction is, they're just vegetables, and you're like, yeah, I'm just not even going to give this my time of day. I'm going to just step away for a moment, and then you can come back as yourself. And those understandings of why you're there. I knew I was premenstrual. I knew my breathing had gone awry. I hadn't noticed during the day because it's all day. So my new level is this suboptimal level, right? So you don't notice in the way that you would at other times if I started to breathe faster during a time when it's not like that. So I really have to use my tools during those few days, because that's when I'm going to feel it. It's also where I feel pain. If I used to have a lot of pelvic pain. If I get really stressed, premenstrual time is the time I'm going to feel the pain, because I'm not putting the work in to counteract, and that's when it gets exacerbated. So if I have that awareness, again, I've got this pain, go and lie down, take a few moments, you're in control, good, pain is gone, go back to what you were doing, rather than this fear and this, this worry. And then also that kind of concept of tracking your body. Not everybody does it. I think it's amazing. I stopped doing it a couple of times just to see what would happen, thinking, I've got this, I know my body, I'll be fine. Went totally off the rails, like stopped eating well, eating late, didn't do enough exercise, didn't sleep as well, because I just wasn't fully aware of what I was doing. And at that moment, if I'm tracking, which I do at night, I'll write things down like how I went to the toilet, what my vaginal discharge is like. Sorry, guys, but it's important for women to know what part of the cycle you're in and what that means for you. If you're anxious, there might be none. That's an important indicator. If you don't have these things that your body tells you that you can read, that you can use, how do you know you've gone too far? Because quite often we're oblivious. We have to look for the signs, and the sign is the fast breathing, difficulty going to the toilet, feeling a lot drier than you should be at that time, feeling that you're tense, feeling there's pain, noticing back and joint pain more than normal. Once you get your own signifiers, you can say, well, I didn't eat well that day or that day or that day, and I didn't do exercise for that day, and I stayed up late 3 days, and well, this is not my usual basic level care of what I need for my day and my non-negotiables. So no wonder I'm feeling bad. But don't be angry at yourself. Just be like, okay, well, tomorrow's a new day. I know what I need to be intentional about. And those have been so important for me to stay on track. I don't want my business to keel me over. I want to be the main earner in my family. I want to have a thriving business. I can't do that without supporting my own health and asking for support from those around me where I can't do it for myself.
Wow. I so honoured the fact that you are so responsible. And you said a couple of things in there that I want to just highlight, and that is that you're tracking your cues and the signs in your body and yourself. So you're being accountable to yourself, you're being responsible, and you're tracking it. How many people do that on themselves, and how many people do that for their business? Now, we're really good at tracking our business, but I guarantee that majority of people listening to this probably don't track themselves like you do. And I don't know about you, Steve, but I'm to me, you've just set the bar, Jane, and setting a standard here around self-care, self-accountability and awareness to then help us be the best versions of ourselves, because without it, you can't be the best version of yourself.
That's
for me. It's really interesting, because I think for the last probably for the last 30, maybe 40 years, there's been a whole industry around self-help. And I've got a bookshelf full of books. For me, this is almost first principles of human behavior. So a lot of the books are all around the cerebral, the consciousness or, mindfulness around it. It's the first time I've heard of the lifeblood that we put into our body, which is oxygen, and the process of converting that into energy and the heartbeat and all the rest of it, which then enables us to be humans. It's just, for me, it's so powerful. I don't know. I've got goosebumps thinking about this as a first principle, that if we all had some, seriously, I've got goosebumps going crazy here. But if we all had that ability to be more self-aware, and then the byproduct of that, is that kindness, being, just being self-aware of that. I've got a grandson, and I'm going to have a chat with my granddaughter about him and his breathing techniques. So thank you so much. We may have saved one life at least.
Oh, bless you. It's just the most. I mean, I say I'm an awareness coach as well, which is something I just made up at the end of the day. What is an awareness coach? It's just such a lovely title to kind of talk about a whole range. If we don't, and bearing in mind I'm not as aware as I'd like to be, there's still a lot further to go, but if we don't start to think about ourselves in a way that we give everyone else and everything else that level of attention, if we're not putting ourselves in that space, then I don't see how anything is sustainable. I am not I'm a slim girl who is still working on improving my calorie take, and I've got things I'm still working on. I want to be in an even healthier space. I've had lots of things to work on, and I would flake out if I don't do the basics. I'm sleep deprived from a 3-year-old. I'm gonna flake out if I don't do the basics. My business and my passion is so important to me. It really is a non-negotiable now. Whereas before, I don't think I recognized that, and it was not the rhetoric of the world around me. It was not what people lived and breathed. It was sort of unusual.
Oh, totally. I just want to call that out. It is a non-negotiable now, and I think if people really want to be the best version of themselves, achieve those big, hairy, audacious goals, create impact, all the things that we talk about in 6-star, you need to be this accountable and be this strict with oneself, just like you are with your business expenses and the way you manage things and deliver things to clients. And yet we've put ourselves last. We actually need to put ourselves first.
Yeah. And that's actually quite an interesting one that I've recently started outsourcing some things in my business that are like the business admin, because I really cannot stand like the admin-y tracking and the numbers, and that's not what I love about my business. I get that is running a business. It needs to be done, but that's not what I love. And yet when I do it for myself, it doesn't feel like admin. So it's a different way of perceiving it. I'm much more interested in seeing my own results and doing that work myself, whereas my business, I can outsource that work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm just suddenly looked at the time, and I'd love to, as we sort of come into a close, Jane, it would be lovely to, you've given us so much already. I always ask the guests, is there some little tidbit or a little nugget or a takeaway that you can leave our listeners with on the parting piece of this lovely conversation?
For me, I would just say, even if it's not for you, even if it's for somebody else in your life who needs that support, educating yourself around breathing and healthy breathing and awareness through breath is a very easy way to get awareness. So that's a really good starting point. If you do that yourself, you'll know how to help others around you. There's people in my family and friendship groups that I didn't know how to help until I did this work. And now I'm starting to see them trusting me and listening and going to get help for themselves, and they're ready, but they have to see you go through some part of journey as well for them to be willing. You can't make people do it. They've got to watch and want to. So I would recommend, it's a really good thing to get into. And meditation, etc., is brilliant, and that's part of it. But for me, it's not just this meditation and yoga, and these have some positive things that people look at, and some people are like, no. This is literally how you breathe 20,000 times a day plus. So it's not a case of feeling like you don't have access. It's a case of, this is very simple stuff. It's just how. And hopefully that gives someone a little bit more power for themselves, but also to help others.
Thank you. That's really, really wonderful. Thank you. Steve, have you got any last questions or comments for Jane?
No, but I think Jane, I don't know whether it was intentionally or unintentional, but what I heard was live and breathe.
Yeah, it works the other way around too, because if you don't,
I was going to say,
but isn't it funny how we use that term to live and breathe, and it's almost like it's a throwaway line. but if we don't breathe, we don't live. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you. Seriously, it's been fascinating and really, really enjoyable. I'm going to intentionally learn more about this for me and for the people around me. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. You've got online courses, obviously, and we'll have the details of all of your, where people can find you on the notes below the podcast. So
thank you very much. Appreciate that. Have
Thank
a
you
wonderful
for
day.
being here. Yes, it's been so lovely talking to you. Thank you.